I didn't believe that I would have enjoyed Lies of P to the extent that I did. Being the spiritual successor of Bloodborne, Lies of P had a lot of pressure to be something greater than just mediocre. Lies of P is a Souls-like that gives you a retelling of the story of Pinocchio within a dark, gritty world. You play as Pinocchio the puppet, with the task of fighting your way through the city of Krat and uncovering the truth of the source of tragedy that has plagued this once great city. As previously stated, Lies of P is a spiritual successor to Bloodborne. One must only look at the world to see the Bloodborne inspiration, but it is much more than just a copy. Lies of P really takes on its own identity with how much polish and swagger it exudes. From the smoothness of its combat to its art and music direction, mode of storytelling both directly and hidden, and overall aura. As I've said in the past and will continue to say when reviewing any video game, gameplay is king. In Lies of P, combat is the most prominent aspect of gameplay by far, thus carrying the greatest amount of scrutiny as well. To put it simply, the combat is excellent. There is your traditional light and heavy attack, side dodge, back dodge, and the running strike. Nothing too out of the ordinary for a Souls-like. The way Lies of P sets itself apart from the rest of the competition is with all the extra combat options. If you know me, you know that I am a big fan of expressive combat. Lies of P has a ridiculous amount of weapons relative to the length of the game. I honestly lost count of exactly how many weapons are on offer. Each weapon comes with its own unique set of fabled darts, one corresponding to the blade of the weapon and the other corresponding to the handle. In Lies of P, you're able to mix and match most of the blades and handles together to make one-of-a-kind unique weapons, making an almost endless number of weapon combinations to choose from. The other addition to combat variety is the Legion arm. Since P has a mechanical arm, you are able to equip different arms to match either your fighting style, your build, or the enemy that your Legion arm counters best. All of these aspects of combat alone would have made for a good Souls-like combat system, but what makes Lies of P's combat system great is the parry mechanic. It is the glue that ties everything together because it enhances both the boss's movesets as well as your own. The guard in this game incentivizes the player to become familiar with the enemy attack pattern and timing. If you parry perfectly, you will take no damage, increase the posture break of the enemy, and increase the chance of breaking the enemy's weapon altogether. If you raise your guard too early, you will reduce some of the damage taken, of which you can get back by quickly attacking your enemy, very similar to the rally mechanic in Bloodborne. In Lies of P, this is called guard regain. Because the parry mechanic exists, the combat feels extremely fair despite the difficulty. The bosses, although tough, are beholden to your skill as a player because every single attack can be parried and 99% of attacks are well telegraphed. The parry mechanic is the most important mechanic in the game because it allows the player a better alternative to the dodge. Iframes exist in Lies of P, but some attacks are almost undodgeable. However, having a parry mechanic gives the dodge a different purpose. The dodge becomes a distance management tool, allowing the player to enter in and out of the combat pocket for when an attack is most suitable. During most of my playthrough, I used the rapier. Since the light attacks from the rapier consume little stamina, I was able to quickly rush into melee range and attack many of the normal enemies without giving them a chance to fight back. In boss fights, the quickness of the rapier gave me more openings of attack in comparison to other weapons that I've tried. I honestly found the rapier to be one of the best weapons, especially because you get it in the early game, choosing the rapier over some of the special weapons that you can buy from Aladoro. But back on the topic of bosses, in a Souls-like, the roster of bosses makes or breaks a combat experience for me. The roster of enemies here is almost perfect with exception to a few bosses. That isn't to say that the bosses are at all S tier, but that they fit well for their placement in the game. The first boss makes for a fine introductory boss, teaching the player the ropes of the game rather quickly. It exposes new players to the atmosphere of a boss fight, along with all the necessary combat elements one would need from this point on, but doesn't make the fight too challenging, where you would have needed mastery of every combat element before even attempting the fight. The second boss provides an awesome skill spike, as the attacks are very well telegraphed, working as a heavy incentivizer to learn the parry windows of the Watchman. The boss roster works so well in this game because many of the bosses play very differently to one another, creating the opportunity for adaptability to the player's own play style and build. I would give the boss roster a solid 8 out of 10, with only a handful of bosses being a letdown for me. Keep in mind, I am merely referring to the main boss at the end of each chapter. There are other mini bosses in the game that are quite fun, like the stalker fights and some of the other special enemies like the Mad Puppet. I had mentioned earlier in the video that your Legion arm can counter different enemies. That is because there are generally 3 enemy factions that you will find throughout Krot. There are carcasses, like the people and monsters plagued by the petrification disease, humans, like the stalkers, and then your puppets. The player has access to different grindstones and abrasives, which act as elemental buffs to your weapon, although their duration is limited. In the heat of combat, it is important you always pay attention to the durability of your weapon, as this mechanic can impact the effectiveness of the blade. Spoiler: in the secret boss of the game against the nameless puppet, I noticed that I couldn't land any impact of significance on the boss once my weapon was in the red or durability was really low. It wasn't even broken at this point, but it still didn't do any damage. In another fight, my weapon broke due to the boss's decay debuff, causing all my damage to go out the window, with my death shortly following. For enemies that can cause decay, it is especially important to consume ampules to get rid of the debuff or to continue to sharpen your weapon whenever available. With every aspect of combat that has been mentioned, it is clear the Studio 8 has gone out of their way to provide the player with an insane number of options in approach. I truly believe that the execution of combat in Lies of P is top tier and deserves heavy praise from the fanbase. Before moving on to the next section, I wanted to mention that Lies of P gives newbies a bit of a helping hand in some boss fights in the form of star fragments. Star fragments are used to summon an NPC helper in your fights, known as specters. Don't worry, they will most likely die before the end of the fight, so you will still have to bring the fight home and get good if you're bad. If combat is the most important part of the gameplay in Lies of P, the level design needs to somewhat match this to really bring the overall feel of gameplay home. Lies of P does level design extremely well in regards to their world. Each place outside of the last chapter is connected to the chapter location prior, and in some instances there are full map wraparounds, like in Dark Souls 1, throughout the city of Krot. For example, when you finish up in chapter 5 and take the elevator after the boss fight, you end up back in Hotel Krot somehow. I thought this was an amazing moment in the video game, and I was like, holy crap, what else do they have to offer? The same holds true for the tunnels in the barren swamps in chapter 8, which then lead you out into the Krot Central Station in chapter 9, right by the train cart you began the game in. Many of the levels have shortcuts you can open to reduce the time from location to location if you were to die along the way. In Lies of P, instead of campfires or sites of grace, you have stargazers. Hotel Krot acts as a central hub where you can increase your stats and add upgrades to your gear and armor, similar to the way the Firelink Shrine functions in Dark Souls 3. Now, it must be said that the level design can vary from chapter to chapter, in that some chapters are a bit more fleshed out than others. I would say that chapter 2 is possibly one of the better examples of a well-designed level, in that the developers made good use of the Stargazer locations and overall verticality of the city landscape. Chapter 10 was the worst and most forgettable chapter in the game, as it serves no purpose other than as a corridor between Hotel Krot and the end of the game. Another mid-chapter would be Chapter 9. Since Chapter 9 reuses the starting area of the game, of which isn't inherently bad because it's a pretty neat area, the devs thought it would be fantastic to add stupid poisonous crystals all over the place, acting as kind of a shit poisonous swamp level that is just tedious overall, especially because we just came from a swamp level. I would go as far as to say that from chapters 8 through 10, the game has a bit of a dip in level design, but chapters 2 through 7 are so strong that it easily makes up for it. In chapter 11, you go back to having some good level design, so at least we end strong. Studio 8's ability to take such a known story like Pinocchio and twist it into this dark fantasy story of mystery and deception whilst keeping the essence of the Pinocchio story is utterly amazing. The creative liberties that the devs took here are done very tastefully as well, only adding to the complexity of the story and the lore of the characters and the city of Krat. You play as P, a puppet whose creator is named Geppetto, and your task is to uncover the mysteries behind the events that have plagued Krat and brought upon the puppet frenzy. The main story is straight to the point, of which I prefer, but for the lore lovers out there, the city of Krat and its surrounding areas have a lot of lore to be discovered and enjoyed. Studio 8's blend of direct storytelling and situational world building is S tier in my opinion, giving the player the choice of going beyond to immerse themselves should they choose to even further. During the video's introduction, I made it a point to emphasize the aura in Lies of P. This game exudes so much aura. Lies of P has an overabundance of swagger and confidence that stems from two key components: art design and music. All throughout the city of Krat, you will see architecture inspired by the Belle Epoque era. The architecture design has characteristics of neo-Gothic elements with Art Deco. The chosen architecture matches so well to what the city of Krat is supposed to symbolize. In the case of Lies of P, Krat is at the forefront of scientific discovery whilst being a playground for the rich and ambitious. The Belle Epoque art choice is important in setting the high expectation of society within Krat because of its real-world application to 19th century France. The Belle Epoque era in France can be seen as a retreat from reality for the rich, opting to use their wealth as an escapism from the grim reality post the loss of the Franco-Prussian War. For architecture to symbolize French dominance that was lost as a result of the war is quite ironic in this case. Krat is quite similar. Yes, prior to the puppet frenzy and the breakout of petrification disease, there was prosperity, but there was also an existent poverty hidden from the eyes of tourists. Chapter 5 shows the very heavy contrast from the city streets as you make your way through the slums of Krat that have been left abandoned and quite isolated from the rest of society. The residents of this area do not partake in the joys, pleasures, and conveniences that the rich do in the rich sectors of Krat. Such symbolism of contrast between the haves and have-nots is heightened as Chapter 6 introduces us to Rosa Isabella Street, the entertainment district of Krat. Many different shops and boutiques line the streets, decorated with big electrical signs and fancy street lampposts, everything leading you up to the Opera House. In my opinion, this is the best use case of art design in the entire game and showcases the depth of research and creativity on behalf of Studio 8 to implement the symbolism of their chosen art design into the city landscape. Music can make or break the atmosphere of any game. Take a second and think of your favorite video game. Chances are you can hear the soundtrack behind them. Red Dead Redemption 2, Nier Automata, Hades, and Uncharted instantly come to mind because of how connected their worlds felt to their soundtracks. When I think of Lies of P, I immediately think of the French girls singing whilst I make my way up Rosa Isabella Street towards the opera, with the mad puppet walking down the street toward me menacingly. That image is so vivid that the rest of the game benefits from it. It's to say that music is much more than an emotion. It is a memory of moments, of which there are many here. Even the moments of silence through some of the more deserted areas like Moonlit Town have gravity. The eerie feeling as you walk through the desolate remnants of a once revered area of Krat is made even more creepy by the silence and then the occasional screams of the carcasses that remain. This is true atmosphere. Regarding the boss fights, it has become customary in these games to add the Gothic-like opera and symphony pieces behind them, giving the end of chapter boss fight their much-deserved spotlight as a finality to the level. When music is able to have an impact when it is both present and absent, you know that the incorporation of it is essential to the mood throughout. Another aspect of swagger and aura in this game is just how smooth the combat is. In particular, the melee combat. It's just so buttery smooth, it's so polished, and you never feel like you get hit with anything unfair. There's no wonky hitboxes. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it makes me just want to test out more weapons. It makes me want to test out different Legion arms, and altogether, it just allows you to flow. And in the Nameless Puppet fight, you feel this more than at any moment in the game. The true flow that is the melee combat with the parry mechanic, with the abrasives and the grindstones, it is utterly beautiful, and I just have to give a chef's kiss to the way the game feels. So yes, this aura, it really comes down to the music, the art, and the buttery smoothness of combat. Everything working in tandem to create a symphony, a beautifully balanced symphony of different arts. Despite how much I love what Lies of P does incredibly, this game is not without its criticisms. Most of the chapters in this game are well done and do a fantastic job of making you feel the love and craftsmanship from the studio. However, chapters 9 and 10 were not up to snuff, each for different reasons. As was discussed before, chapter 10 is just simply too short. It serves as a connection or a corridor between Hotel Krot and the underground mining system that connects to a submarine docking station. The chapter itself is only about 1.5 rooms to move around in, followed by the boss room. No shortcuts, no optional bosses, and no more lore other than what's already been given to us in an explicit cutscene or what information Gemini provides us. It is definitely weak in comparison to the other chapters and almost feels totally unnecessary. If anything, I would have preferred for chapter 10 to have been a bit longer and for chapter 11 to have its time reduced to balance out the chapter lengths. Chapter 9 is of appropriate length, has a couple of decent boss fights, introduces a cool new enemy type in the form of the Alchemist, which we will see from here on out, and has a great atmosphere, but Studio 8 made an inconvenient design choice. As I had stated previously, we had just came from a poisonous swamp in chapter 8, which was fine. It was designed fine. It wasn't an annoying swamp that was just a complete chore to do. It was an appropriate swamp and it made sense in the context of the story. But in this case, you just have all these stupid crystals everywhere in chapter 9. It would have been great to kind of have that space to really explore the area that you started the game in. Kind of a callback, a nice callback that then undergoes all the craziness that happens in chapter 9. Instead, we have to rush through this section because of these stupid crystals that are everywhere. And if you destroy them and you die, they just respawn. So they were completely and utterly a nuisance. It doesn't serve any purpose. It just serves to be more annoying of a section when it was a beautiful section to look at, but ruined by this design choice. Outside of the level design criticisms, I would have liked some of the Legion arms to be a bit more useful, in particular the flame arm, the electric arm, and the base arm. For the fire and electric arm, I wish there was just a little bit more range. For the base arm, I wish it wouldn't require as much Legion because it doesn't get upgraded, so it shouldn't require a bunch of Legion. You're just hitting your enemy with your arm. It really should have been almost like kind of a low stakes, low cost Legion arm. There is another Legion arm in this game that sets down mines as well, but this is forgettable at best. I'd rather it be in the game for the people that like to experiment with different equipment, but I personally think that you have to go out of your way to make it useful rather than the arm being inherently useful by design. The value offered by a video game is as subjective as it gets. In my opinion, the value of a video game is best measured by the gold standard of the genre the game hopes to compete with. When I look at games to compare Lies of P to, you just have to choose Bloodborne and Sekiro as obvious contenders. This comparison alone is a testament to the level of polish Lies of P exudes, a Souls-like that sits at the table with Miyazaki's Soulsborne games. On average, Lies of P will be beaten around 2 to 3 hours quicker than the others, putting it at around 25 hours or so, but on top of the first playthrough, there is New Game Plus and a ton of replayability because of the weapon system that was discussed earlier. I was able to have two completely different experiences in the combat style by swapping from the way of the Cricket Saber to the way of the Bastard Rapier at the start of the game. There is a weapon here for everyone, and if it doesn't exist, the beautiful thing is that you can create it yourself. Mix and match different weapons with different Legion arms, use different pre-organ paths, change how you distribute your skill points. There are so many ways to play this game, it is insane just how much replayability is on offer in Lies of P. That alone gives it so much value, but the value increases when bringing up the story. The collectibles, the Easter eggs, and the upcoming DLC that is supposed to be about 15 to 20 hours in length on top of the initial 25 hours from the base game. In my opinion, Lies of P is more than value for money and a must-have if you can find a game on sale. It isn't often that I find myself replaying any single player game after I have initially beaten it, but Lies of P has a hold on me that is almost indescribable. The combat does such an amazing job in rewarding mastery that you can't help yourself but to run it back. It also helps that the world is beautiful to look at from multiple angles and areas. It's not just one area that's exclusive to this beautiful treatment, it's almost all of them. Even if they look bad with a purpose. The Barren Swamp is a swamp, it's a graveyard for puppets, and it looks so damn gritty and good. As for the story, Studio 8 does just enough to keep you in the loop without boring you with the details for those of you that don't wish to dive deep into the world's lore and just wish to enjoy the combat. Lies of P is by far the best Souls-like on the market and deserves to sit alongside FromSoft's Bloodborne and Sekiro. Do I recommend Lies of P? 100%. Now, is Lies of P a masterpiece? Definitely. Incredible roster of bosses, complex and fun weapon system, and a well-optimized experience with a compelling story, Lies of P gets a legendary 9 out of 10 from me. Alright y'all, I hope you all have enjoyed the video, and I hope to see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.